Let's see how to develop a chatbot like this, which will do actions based on the user prompt. For this, we'll be using OpenAI Chat Completion APIs, and at the end of the development, the bot should be smart enough to understand if the given user prompt need any action or not. If it need any action, the bot should call a custom function and the response from the custom function should be reverted back to the user. Let's see how to develop this. The first step is to navigate to openai.com, go to the products API login. Here you need to log in or sign up. After you're logged in, go to user profile, click on API keys, click on create new secret key, provide the name and select the project. You can select the default project and click on create secret key. If you're doing it for the first time, you need to verify your mobile number. Once the mobile verification is completed, you will be able to create the key. Now copy the key and store it in your vault. Now for this API key to work, you need to have credits. So for that, you need to go to billing page and buy a credits. So once you have a credits, you should be able to use your API key. Now let's see how to use this API and develop the bot. So the second step here, we need to understand how to use the chat completion APIs provided by OpenAI. For that, I have created a project on Node and installed the OpenAI npm package, and I have copied the API key to the .env file here. Now let's see how to use the chat completion APIs. Here I'm importing the OpenAI and creating an object for that and passing the API key as an input while creating this object. Now using this object, I am calling the chat completion API by calling openai.chat.completion.create. This method, I'm passing three things as an input. One is model. Here I'm using GPT-4, and then the second one is messages. Here in under the messages, I am setting up the first message as a system message where I'm setting up the role for the chatbot. We can say we can give some context to the chatbot, or it can be role, or it can be like a behavior we can set using the role as a system. And the second message here is the user query itself with the role user and whatever the query. Here I mentioned as what is the share price of the Google. And the third input we have to pass is tools. So this is the main component we need to pass. Under the tools, let's see how to define a tool. So tool, here I'm defining it as a type function, and I'm giving the function definition here. So under this function definition, I'm saying my function name is get stock price, and I'm giving a description for this. And also I'm telling what are the parameters my function will expect and what is the type of that particular parameter. So here I've given the description clearly saying that get stock price by symbol. If user provides the name of the company, provide the symbol as input. So I'm telling GPT that okay, do some type of conversion here. So which makes easy so that we don't need to handle this conversations by ourselves in a code. And this is a parameter. Again, under for the parameter, I'm giving the description that this is a symbol of the company, so convert the company name to symbol if needed. And I'm mentioning that what are the required parameters here. In my case, it's only symbol is only single parameter, and I'm not accepting any additional parameters. So this is the function definition, and I'm passing this entire function and the tool definition to the uh, chat completion API as the third parameter. Now the response from this method will have the two things. It will have a message with the content, or it will have the tool call. So whenever the ChatGPT decides that we need a function call here, it will return as the tool underscore calls object. So whenever we see this, we need to extract the function name and the arguments which it is returning, and then use that name to call the related function by passing the parameters. And then the response from this function should be written back to the conversation messages. So the whatever the messages we are building, we need to add to that messages, so that we can just pass that messages again to the GPT for the response. So here the response from the function, we are adding it as a role tool, and then we are giving the tool ID and the response from the function here in this object. And entire object we are adding to the message, and this messages we are sending back to the chat completion API, and then we are getting the response from the chat completion. So when we run this particular code, and we can see it's making an API call. So if we see, we are printing the messages here, and if you see, these are the two initial messages which we have sent. And here is the question: what is the share price of Google? For this message, the response which we got from the assistants is this, like, tool call. So it basically says we need to make a tool call, and it's of type function, and the function name is get stock, and these are the arguments which we need to pass for that function. So now our code has the logic to see this tool call, get the function name, and pass these arguments, and then read those responses from the function, send it back to the chat completion API with the response of the function. So here if we see, we have sent it as a role tool, and then assistance has seen that okay, this is the tool response, and this response is for this particular tool ID, whatever it has sent initially, and I have to respond back to the user in a proper way. So this is how the conversation will build. So next step we will see is how to use this code and build a proper bot which will have a backend and which will also have a front end. Now we know that how to use the chat completion API, have moved all that code into the backend. Here I have created another backend project and copied all that code into the server.js, and I'm using Express here so that I can expose an API called slash chat and use this API from the front end chatbot. So this is the chatbot front end UI. Now I have made the UI up, and also I made the backend up already. So now this is the final step. We already have the UI ready. Let's see how this bot gonna respond for the user query. So the UI will look like this, and when user chats, it should reply with the messages, and if it sees like if this message has any action to do, then it should do an function call. So here we'll just do a normal conversation, how are you, and because this doesn't have any action required, so it should just respond. And let's say if we ask any query like what is the share price of Amazon, now this should go and call the API and get the response from the API. And if because we are building the conversation, we can just simply say what about Google. So it understands that we are talking about the share price, and it should revert back that Google share price. So in this particular example, we have added another function called get gender. So let's see if this function call will work. So I will ask what is the gender of name. So this function will take the name as the input, and it should guess the gender of that particular name. So name Santosh. So it should make an API call and then revert back the response from the API call. So the name Santosh typically is a male. So now we see our bot got a capabilities of ChatGPT, as well as it can do a custom actions. Now we can enhance this bot by adding more custom functions and take the complete advantages of the chat completion API. Hope you like this content.